Today's story, The Thief of Smell. Once upon a time, in a small, peaceful town in America, there lived a baker named Samuel. He was well known in the town for making the softest, most aromatic bread, and his bakery was the heart of the community. People would gather at his shop early in the morning, waiting for the first batch of freshly baked bread to be pulled from the oven. The smell would fill the air, drifting through the streets, making everyone's mouths water in anticipation. Baker Samuel's bakery was more than just a place to buy bread. It was where people gathered to chat, share stories, and enjoy the warm, comforting aroma of fresh pastries. Samuel had a special way of baking. The bread was always just the right amount of crispy on the outside and soft on the inside, and his cakes were legendary. The whole town depended on his bakery, and it was said that no one could bake bread quite like him. But despite all the praise for his baking, Samuel wasn't a friendly man. He was a solitary person who focused only on his work. He was meticulous about everything: his dough, his oven, and even the way he arranged the loaves on the shelves. He rarely smiled, and his interactions with the townspeople were short and businesslike. He often gave only a nod in greeting, and his eyes were always on the work at hand. The baker's cold demeanor didn't stop the townspeople from appreciating his baking. They would visit his bakery every day, buying their bread and pastries, but also standing outside just to inhale the delightful smell of the bread. The air around the bakery was always thick with the mouth-watering aroma of fresh pastries, and it was said that you could smell it from blocks away. One chilly winter morning, as snow began to gently fall outside, Samuel was inside his bakery preparing a fresh batch of bread. The bakery was warm, and the oven glowed with a steady heat. He shaped the dough carefully, his hands moving with the rhythm of years of practice. The smell of baking bread filled the room, and for a moment, Samuel felt a small sense of pride. His bakery was doing well, and everyone seemed to appreciate his work. But as he was pulling the golden brown loaves from the oven, he looked up and noticed something that annoyed him. A young man was standing outside his bakery, just standing there, with his eyes closed and a peaceful expression on his face. He was inhaling the scent of the bread deeply, as if savoring every moment of it. Samuel frowned. "How dare he enjoy my bread for free?" he muttered to himself. "He hasn't paid for it. He's just standing there, breathing in my hard work. I should charge him for that smell." As the young man continued to breathe in the scent, Samuel grew more irritated. He was certain that no one should be able to enjoy his bread's smell without paying for it. The thought of people enjoying his work without any exchange of money made him feel resentful. He marched over to the door and swung it open, causing the young man to jump in surprise. "You!" Samuel shouted. "You're stealing my bread smell. You must pay for it." The young man, startled by the baker's outburst, opened his eyes and looked at him with confusion. "Stealing the smell?" he asked, his voice soft. "But I haven't taken anything. I'm just standing here, enjoying the scent of your bread. It's so delicious." Samuel wasn't listening. His face was red with anger as he grabbed the young man by the arm and dragged him toward the street. "You'll pay for the smell of my bread, whether you like it or not," he declared. The young man protested, but Samuel was relentless. He dragged him all the way to the judge's house, determined to get justice. The judge, an older man who lived in a cozy cottage near the edge of town, was still in his pajamas when he answered the door. He had just woken up from a long night's sleep and was confused to see the baker standing there, fuming, with a young man by his side. "What's going on here?" the judge asked, rubbing his eyes. "This man is stealing my bread's smell," Samuel shouted, his voice filled with frustration. The judge raised an eyebrow and looked at the young man. "Is this true? Are you stealing this man's bread smell?" he asked. The young man looked at the judge, then at Samuel, and shook his head. "I haven't taken anything from him," he said. "I'm just standing here, breathing in the air. The smell is so nice, I couldn't help it." Samuel crossed his arms and tapped his foot impatiently. "He's enjoying the fruits of my labor without paying. The smell of my bread is mine, and he's taking it." The judge thought for a moment, scratching his chin. This is quite a strange case. I'll have to think about it carefully." He invited both of them inside his home, where they sat down in front of a small fire. The judge, though puzzled, listened carefully to both sides of the story. Samuel explained how he worked day and night to bake the bread, how he poured all his effort into making sure it was perfect. He was angry that people were enjoying it without compensating him for the work that went into creating such a wonderful smell. The young man, on the other hand, explained that he wasn't taking anything from the bakery. He was simply enjoying the aroma of the bread in the air. "Air is free," he said. "I'm not taking anything that belongs to the baker. I'm just breathing in the smells around me." The judge nodded, clearly understanding both sides. After a long pause, he turned to the young man. "Do you have any money?" he asked. The young man reached into his pocket and pulled out a few coins. "I have just a few coins. I was saving them for some bread, but I don't have enough yet." The judge smiled. "Well then," he said, "let's settle this. Samuel, the smell of your bread may be wonderful, but it's not something you can sell. The young man hasn't taken anything from you. However, since you both seem to be focused on this smell, I think we should make an exchange. Let's take these coins from the young man." Samuel was taken aback. "What? But he hasn't stolen anything." The judge raised his hand. "Samuel, you're focused on something that isn't really yours to sell. The air, the smell, they belong to everyone. But the coins are something tangible, something that can be exchanged. These coins represent a kind of fairness, a balance of value." The young man handed the coins to the judge, who placed them on the table. "Now, I want both of you to think for a moment. Samuel, you have spent your life working to create something beautiful, bread that brings joy to the town. But remember, the real value isn't just in the bread itself. It's in the joy it brings to others." He turned to the young man. And you may have just enjoyed the bread smell, but sometimes it's the small things, like the scent of fresh bread in the morning, that bring us the most happiness. Samuel was quiet for a long time, thinking about what the judge had said. Finally, he nodded, his anger fading. "Perhaps I've been too focused on the wrong things," he admitted. "I should be grateful that people appreciate my work, even if it's just the smell." The young man smiled, relieved that the matter was finally settled. "Thank you, Judge," he said. The judge nodded. Sometimes, we forget that the true value of our work and our lives isn't always in what we can touch or hold. It's in the moments that we share with others, the simple pleasures that make life worthwhile. From that day on, Samuel became a little friendlier to the people who visited his bakery. He would smile more, chat with the customers, and even offer a loaf of bread to someone in need. He understood that the value of his work wasn't just in the bread he baked, but in the joy it brought to everyone who tasted it or even smelled it from a distance. And as for the young man, he continued to visit the bakery every day, enjoying the smell of the fresh bread and the warm atmosphere. He knew that life was full of simple pleasures, like the smell of bread in the morning, and he never took them for granted again.